That button there, there we go. Now we got all the buttons pushed. So many buttons, such little time. Again, my name's Dave Deacon, and welcome to the OKLApreneur Lunch and Learn. We're excited that you're here with us, and we're going to be talking with Richard Gajan with Oklahoma State University here in just a second. I do want to remind you, if you do have questions, go ahead and go ahead and put those down in the comments area, and we will be sure and pass those along. So without further ado, we'll just dive in. I do want to start off by saying, with 35 years of professional experience in a broad range of industries and disciplines, Richard Gajan spent the last 17 years working with small and startup businesses, focusing on business creation and new product development, engaging with entrepreneurs, inventors, university researchers, and small business owners. Richard Gajan helps them go from concept or laboratory through market introductions and sales growth. Having helped over 48 client companies raise equity financing in excess of $33 million, Richard continues to work with clients in roles of business development and CFOs. And Richard earned his MBA from the University of Michigan Ross School of Business. He also holds an MS in mechanical engineering from Texas A&M University and a BS in mechanical engineering from Oklahoma State University. So, without further ado, let's introduce Mr. Richard Gajan from Oklahoma State University. Thanks for coming on with us today. Yeah, well,
I am here. Professor of practice and associate professor of practice. And a professor of practice means I am not tenured or tenured track. I don't do research. I spend half my time teaching and half my time working with students, faculty on their business plans, business ideas. And as a land grant university, Oklahoma State University has an outreach program through the Riata Center. So if there's anybody on this webcast that needs some help with their business, I am free to talk to you. It's part of what I get paid to do. And so I enjoy doing things like this. Now, to tell you a little bit about why I'm here, is you asked to talk about business plans, and I'm happy to do that. I am a big believer in business plans. There are debates. Brad Feld has an article talking about how business plans are dead. But I do believe business plans are very important because they help you as an individual work through all the details that you have to address when you're thinking about starting or growing your business. And it serves as a worthwhile document that you can share with investors, share with fellow employees to keep everybody on the same page and everybody knows where we're going in the same direction.
When it comes to building a business plan, I mean, it does build that map. It does cause you to do the research that goes into it. But what really does need to go into the business plan that an investor will actually be interested in reading?
Sure. So I have a couple of key points. The first is your concept. And so what is the opportunity you've identified? All right. How do you make money? What's your business model when it comes to that opportunity? Or if there's a problem you solve, what's your solution and how do you make money off of that solution? And that's the first element is understanding your opportunity. Then you have to analyze the market. You can't change the outside world. So who is your competition? How big is your market opportunity? Who is your target market that cares the most? How do you add value to those folks? And then what's your sales approach? Because they're not going to come running to you. You can't just build a better mousetrap, they're going to run to you. And then you want to talk about operations as your third key. So how do you run the business? How do you get the job done? How many employees do you need? How many resources, equipment, so on and so forth to make this happen? And who's on your management team and what's their expertise? And then I look at the money side of things. If you need to raise money or borrow money, how much do you need? What are you going to use it for? And if you do that, how much money are you going to make in revenue? And how much? What are your expenses? Do you know how much your rent is and how much your employees' salaries are? And how profitable will you be? And if you're doing a startup and you need an investor, then you might have to have an exit strategy or at least a long-term plan. What's the goal for the long term, not just the next 2 years? And then do some status evaluation, conclusion. Look at your risks. Every business plan has risks. Every business plan has a flaw, and failure to acknowledge that means you're drinking your own Kool-Aid. It's really what you're saying to yourself. So put the risks on the table, but put mitigation strategies. And those are the main components that any investor or any banker is looking at.
When it does come to building those forecasts of profits, I mean, in my experience, it's just been, well, that seems like I can make $60,000, selling chicken. I should be able to do that. But how do you recommend somebody actually build those forecasts in those situations?
Sure, that's a great question. I learned early that a bottoms up sales forecast is the best. And if you've never heard that phrase, and many people hadn't, I know there was a time before when I hadn't heard it. A top down forecast was to say, oh, it's $1 billion market. If we get 1% of that market, we'll make $10 million. Well, that's a top down view. And where does that why 1%? Why not 2%, or why not one half of 1%? You're just kind of pulling a number out of the air, makes it sound like. The flip side of that is a bottoms up sales forecast was, what do I do to get my first customer? And then why do I get my second customer and third customer, and I add that up. So for an example of a bottoms up sales forecast, if I take out $500 ads in Google AdWords to come to my website, and 500 people click on my website, and I believe that 20 of them will buy it, and those 20 people will each pay $100, I just made $2,000 on a $500 ad. Now, if I can do a $500 ad every day, then I'm making $2,000 every day, and you add that number up, and pretty soon you made some pretty good money. But that whole bottoms up sales forecast is you can start off as a hypothesis, but you can test it. You can take out a $500 ad and see how many people click. Hopefully $1 an ad, maybe 500 people click. And if 20 people do buy it, then maybe you have something. If nobody buys it, then that plan, that idea didn't work. But the point is, you can, for a $500 test, you can find out if your sales forecast has some merit. And you can do it a couple of times, and if you do it a couple of times, and each time you made $2,000, then you can go to an investor and say, hey, can you give me the money to do $10,000 worth of advertising? Because I can turn that $10,000 worth of advertising into $100,000 worth of revenue. And you have a plan with some basis.
What's the old saying? It has to do with a dream it's the definition between a dream and a plan is the details. There you go.
And a plan is the details. And that's why, I've sent you a business plan template you can share with anybody. You'll see details in there like, what's your location? If I'm going to open a chicken stand, saying I'm going to open a chicken stand is just an idea. But if I say I'm going to open it at 6th and Western, and I'm not going to sell fried chicken like everybody else, I'm going to sell rotisserie chicken, and I'm going to sell fresh vegetables, not the canned vegetables, and I'm going to have homemade biscuits, and it's going to have 14 tables, and it's going to be priced at, and those are the details that separate the idea from an actual plan.
When it comes to doing more of the research, I'm really focusing on the research of this because a lot of the business plan is running the numbers, doing the research. How should somebody, and I understand it varies from business to business, but how should somebody really look at doing research into the industry, but then also a market?
Sure. So we talk in terms of two different types of research. One we call primary research, and that's basically talking to potential customers. And we're really big believer in that. Going out and if you've got an idea, and I don't think rotisserie chicken stand is the best idea, but we'll use it anyway. For a rotisserie chicken stand, you would talk to your potential customers and find out how many of them think something that they would use. All right. I mean, just, interview who you think your customer is and find out if they're as excited about your idea as you are. And that's part of what you do. The other part is we call secondary research, and that's where you're doing internet research. So if I'm going to open a chicken stand in Stillwater that's maybe a little higher end, I can find out what the demographic population of Stillwater is and what their average income is, and compare that and find a location that's closer to where my market might live. And so there's online research, there's interviewing people, but you really want to do a lot of research before you spend a lot of money.
And doing the legwork ahead of time, like you say, will help whenever it does come to the money. Whenever somebody is in the process of this, they really shouldn't rush through it. I mean, a business plan is a marathon, not a sprint, and it really should take time.
The more time you spend planning, the less time you spend fixing mistakes. That's the way I like to say it. Really looking ahead and laying out everything that needs to be done. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not looking for perfection, but I'm looking for thoroughness. All right, that you say, okay, if I'm going to figure out, for example, let's go with the rotisserie chicken restaurant. Okay, it's going to have how much money do you need to raise? How much money do you need to open this restaurant? Okay, well, I've got to buy tables. Do you know how much the tables cost? Have you planned how many tables you're going to buy? And if each of those tables is going to have 4 seats or somebody going to have 2 seats, how much do the seats cost? All right, and then I'm going to have napkin holders and all of these, and a real list of everything you got to buy and real quotes. You can go to thomasnet.org and look up suppliers for napkin holders, and you'll get a supplier with a napkin holder, and you can call them, and they will tell you how much a napkin holder costs. And that doesn't same thing for tables and chairs and silverware, and you're going to put pictures on the wall.
Mm-hmm. 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 Whenever it comes to opening that business and doing all of the research that goes into it, and I keep going back to research. I know I'm going to overuse the word research, but it's a good idea for entrepreneurs to not only look at brand new. You may need brand new equipment, but also look at used and then maybe alternate options too, because when it comes down to it, it is a game of price.
It is very, very true. The way I teach the concept of leveraging capital, right? That's trying to do more with less money. Okay, so for instance, let's say you're going to have a delivery service. Well, you have a choice. You can buy a car or you can lease a car. Well, if you're going to start a new business and buy a car, you don't want to pay cash for that car. That's a huge suction up your cash. You need that cash. So if you can finance it or lease it, so you're not saying I'm buying a $10,000 car or $30,000 car, I need $30,000. You're saying, no, I'm going to lease a car for $500 a month. So the first year I only need $6,000. And likewise, if you can pick up refurbished furniture, or I've seen some stores, I've been to a coffee shop, everything in there, it looks like they got bought from a garage sale, but it's so eclectic it works, and it's a unique design idea.
When it comes to we'll move through the business plan template that you have a little bit more. How should people think about risk assessment? Because everything looks great, everything sounds great, everything, you're going into it with rose colored glasses, but it's important for entrepreneurs to really think about what could happen in the future.
All right, there's just on the big picture level, we talk about a couple of risk categories. Okay, first off, there's management risk. Do you have the expertise? And if you don't have the expertise, can you find the expertise? Can you hire the expertise? Can you get the training? All right. And execution intelligence. It's not about raw IQ. It's knowing what you need to do. And can you look at yourself and the staff you're bringing in as a capability of doing that? There's market risk that what you're offering to sell may not be accepted by your potential customer base. Okay. There's the risk category of the unknown. All right. What might happen? Okay. If you're opening a restaurant, in January of last year, COVID hit. Who'd have predicted that? So that kind of risk, you may not be able to predict the unknown, but do you have cash cushion? Do you have reserves that allow you to withstand it? And then what's your mitigation plan? If business dropped by half, how do you survive? Because a lot of times we think the essence of running a business is being able to survive the lean times so you can make money in the good times. And because COVID will be over at some point, and if your place can survive, now people that have been cooped up, haven't been spending money, are ready to go out and spend some money, and you might do really well.
When it comes to taking the business plan as a whole to an investor, what should an entrepreneur be thinking about whenever they're booking the time with an investor and actually going to be walking in with this? Well, back in grad school, I think our paper was 100 plus pages, but for a business plan. But what should be the focus of that entrepreneur whenever they do meet with that person?
A couple of things. First off, keep it short if you can. All right. If you are doing something somebody already understands, like you're going to open a smoothie shop, you don't need a lot of detail. Everybody knows what a smoothie shop is. You have to emphasize how you are different and why you're better. And you have to do that with some excitement so that your passion comes through, because your business plan is a mix of the details that tells them exactly what you're going to do and a bit of a sales pitch to say, yes, this will be awesome. My smoothies are going to be the best smoothies ever, and I am so excited about this, and I'm confident I can do this. And have you want the investor or the banker to read this and go, I believe this can happen. I believe this person can do it. And that's part of the message that has to come out. That's not just a list of details.
I know we're talking about business plans here, but I'm going to kind of take a step off of it just a little bit. So many times people think, "Oh, I need a loan for this. I need to find a venture capitalist for this. I need to find an angel resource. I'm going to deplete my life savings for this." What are some of the realistic options for entrepreneurs whenever it does come to chasing their dream and pursuing their passion?
Okay, so I'm going to hit all four of those categories real quick. So here's the first thing about bankers and a loan. Bankers don't loan money to startups. It's a rarity. And if you are co-signing that loan, they're really giving you a personal loan that you're using to spend your own money on the business. So a banker is going to want to see 3 years of history minimum, and they want to see positive cash flow. And if you're making $2,000 a month, the most amount of money they're going to lend you will give you a payment that's below $2,000 a month. So if you had a business for 5 years and you're writing a business plan because you want to grow your business, open up a new location, a bank loan might be a good option for you. If you're a startup, no history, the banks aren't going to mess with you. They really aren't. So then the next option is, can you bootstrap your business? All right. So there's lots of folks, and I could tell you about one of the students I had. He started working out of his dorm room, then he got an office, and he was basically repairing high-end shoes and reselling them at a markup. And he just kept growing and growing and growing till he had enough revenue and enough established customer base that he felt comfort owning a brick and mortar store, and that leveraged his ability to reach customers and grew his business. So he didn't get any money from anybody. He didn't deplete his savings. He went out and made $100, took that $100 and made that to $200 and kept doing that over and over again. And he worked very, very hard. Now, if you can't grow slowly, if you have to have an investment to start, because maybe you're going to open a lawn business and you need to buy $5,000 worth of equipment, and you don't necessarily have $5,000 in your bank, or you don't want to take it all out, which I don't necessarily recommend you do, but you need a attributable sum of money, maybe $25,000. Well, or maybe $300,000. But then angel investors or friends of family are a decent place to start. Now, an angel investor is someone who's of high net worth, that is what we would call a credit investor. They have over $250,000 in income or over $1 million in liquid assets, and they could write you a check, an investment. They're not giving you money, they are buying part of your company. All right, you might sell 30% of your company for $200,000. And if you make $100,000 in profit, you'll give 30,000 of that back to the investor. And so those angel investors tend to do smaller deals. It's really hard to get an angel to write a very large check, and by that I mean over 500,000, because that's just a big investment for one individual. And I have seen groups of angel investors, and Oklahoma has the Seed Step Angels. We also have the Kaba Technologies Angels. There's a different angel investor group in Tulsa that you'll get 4 or 5 angels that all put in $50,000 and be able to help launch a business. Venture capital tends to be for a much larger investment. It may be a startup that's 3 years old. They're not cash flow positive because they're reinvesting all their money, like Amazon reinvested all their money for 30 years. But you've proven you've got a technology that works. You've proven you got a customer that'll buy it, and now you need $3 million to really go national, and that falls in the area of venture capitalists who tend to make much larger investments that have really high growth potential and have some kind of traction that they can leverage.
It's funny that you mentioned venture capitalists last, because there is that romance with Shark Tank. I mean, it's fun to watch that. How realistic is Shark Tank whenever it comes time to make that pitch to a potential investor?
Well, so there's a lot of realism there. I will tell you, because I've been in lots and lots of investor presentations, and they ask the same type of questions. And when Shark Tank launched, I was like, oh, now he's going to ask about the profit margins. And they did turn out to ask about the profit margins. Well, how much revenue have you sold? I mean, how long have you been in business? How much of your own money have you put in the deal? Those are all very realistic questions. Here's the one thing I love about Shark Tank isn't that I watch the show. What I love about Shark Tank is that there are literally thousands of people, just like the sharks, that have watched Shark Tank and said, I can do that. And now they're willing to put their own money into their own entrepreneurs and their own community. And that has helped entrepreneurship. It really has. But you can expect to get questions. By the way, if Shark Tank makes it look like they only spend 15 minutes with the folks they're interviewing. And the reality is they spend 2 hours or so with them, and they only cut to the 15 minutes to highlight the exciting questions, not the boring questions. But the boring questions are there. And I'll tell you one thing. Have you seen The Profit? I think if you want to learn something about entrepreneurship, The Profit is a much better show to learn how to run and manage a company. Shark Tank is a good show to learn how to pitch. I think they're both valuable shows, but you want to share that.
When it comes to, I mean, you've been on the receiving end of pitches, maybe not at a Shark Tank level, but what is going through your mind whenever somebody brings a potential business to you, and are you running the numbers constantly? Do you have a list of questions in your mind ready to go?
I gave you some 4 main categories earlier. What's in the business plan? It is exactly that. Okay, what's the problem? Is that problem real? Does the person who have the problem know they have the problem? Because you have to tell them they have a problem. People do things for the status quo and they're used to it. They don't think it's a problem. Is your solution unique? Do you have some intellectual property? Are you ahead of the competition? Do you have adequate profit margin? Do you have recurring revenue? And I mean, just every single one of these things about your management team. How much experience do you have? Have you ever raised money before? Have you ever run a startup before? Have you ever managed people before? Have you ever sold anything before? I have this huge checklist of questions that follows along with the template in the business plan. Basically, every little bullet point in that business plan is answering one question that I want to know. How big is your market? Is your market large enough that if you only capture a very small percent, you can still be successful?
So our time here for the lunch and learn is narrowing down. What in summary, what should entrepreneurs know about a business plan that someone who's never done one before be thinking about?
There's a lot more common sense than there is rocket science. I mean, it's really helping you focus on all of the details you need to look at. And I think it's a valuable document. It's also what we call a living document. All right. And so I'm not joking, I worked for a Fortune 200 company and we updated our business plan every year. And it was part of what we did. And it was part of setting our budget. All right. What new projects are we going to engage in? How much does a new project cost? I mean, it was more intrapreneurship than it was entrepreneurship, but it was likewise. And that document should be something that you really believe in and that you've written in good faith, but you shows the passion for what you have to do.
Well, thank you so much for coming on with us today on our OKLApreneur Lunch and Learn. And if people have questions, how can they reach out to you?
Well, Dave, you've got my contact information. Feel free to share it with anybody that requests it. And if they'll send me an email, I'll be happy to set up a Zoom appointment with them. That's not a problem at all. I do like to Zoom. I'm getting used to it now. I can do a phone call, and if you're local and you want to do face to face, I can meet you in person too. That's not a problem. But we're here to help. So if you got a short, specific question I can answer in 5 minutes, great. If you want to sit down and have an hour talk, I'll be happy to.
Well, thank you so much, Richard. And for a link to his contact information and some of the resources we talked about today on the OKLApreneur Lunch and Learn, head on over to the OKLApreneur Learning Community, and that's free to join. Just go in there and we'll get you approved for the OKLApreneur Learning Community. Again, we'll put a link to the resources in there, and we will be doing this again here pretty quick. So thanks again to everybody who joined us for the inaugural OKLApreneur Lunch and Learn.